How do you imagine Saudi Arabia? Personally, I imagined a religious, very conservative country, the spiritual center of Islam. Saudi Arabia is very rich in oil, so in my mind it was supposed to be a wealthy country. Everything was supposed to be shiny, plus deserts, endless uninhabited spaces. However, Saudi Arabia turned out to be a bit different, and I was very interested to visit this country in person, as it broke many stereotypes in my head. So, what did I see in this country? Today's story might seem incredibly boring, because I didn't visit a single museum, I just walked the streets of the industrial city. But that's the point of this video. We'll see the real, non-touristy Saudi Arabia, using the city of Dammam as an example. As I was getting on the bus, I felt that I was going to Saudi Arabia. The bus had separate sections. The first rows of seats were reserved for women or for married couples. The second half of the bus was for men. Although I understood that Saudi Arabia is a different world, I didn't expect to see the bus divided into sections. The bus itself, by the way, belonged to the company Sabtco. This company was until recently a monopolist in the bus transportation market in Saudi Arabia. Now there are competing companies, but Sabtco is still the largest and main bus company. So, the bus was divided into sections, a sign of the country's extreme conservatism. But then a surprise awaited me. At the border control between Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, a woman got off the bus in jeans, with her head uncovered, and in that state, she walked up to the Saudi border guards. And what do you think? They let her through completely calmly, without any lectures. It turned out that since 2019, the requirement to wear an abaya and cover your hair has been abolished in Saudi Arabia. It was here that I realized my perception of this country doesn't quite line up with what I see. But at the same time, I was expecting big contrasts. Dammam is a large port city which is called the oil capital of the region. I expected to see sparkle and luxury. Instead, I saw an ordinary city. In some places it was a bit dirty, in others it was quite simple. I didn't get the impression that I was in a country that provides about 10% of the world's oil supply. Upon arrival, I first checked into the hotel. Above the reception desk, there were portraits of the king and the heir, and across from the reception desk, beer was being sold. Wait, beer? Saudi Arabia and beer? That can't be. But it turned out to be non-alcoholic beer. Alcohol is still strictly prohibited here. The hotel room was large, spacious and nice, but it turned out to be not so perfect. Only lukewarm water came out of the tap, and at any time of the day. The shower sprayed water all over the room. The toilet leaked. The smell accordingly was also not the most pleasant. To be honest, I didn't expect this, because visually the room was great. In the room there was a Quran, a prayer rug, and a mihrab arrow pointing towards Mecca. Traditionally for this region, the day was extremely hot, so I had to wait until the evening before I could walk around the city. And you know, the streets of Saudi Arabia looked ordinary. Nothing extraordinary. The only thing that caught my eye was the beautiful front doors of private houses. They were like a separate form of art. I saw global brands on the streets. The Body Shop, Starbucks, McDonald's. Above the entrance to McDonald's, there was still a sign, Singles Section, a zone for men only. Officially, the separation into men's and women's zones in restaurants was abolished back in 2019. But when I went through those doors, I only saw men, and all the women were separate on the second floor. So we see again that although the rules have been significantly relaxed, they are still followed due to habit and tradition. The waterfront in Dammam is great. You can watch a beautiful sunset from it. A lot of locals walk along the waterfront. I was a bit afraid to film people, especially women. Most of them were in abayas. All the women I saw on the street were not alone. They were always accompanied by a husband, relatives or friends. More often, I saw them with friends, of course women. Although walking without an escort has not been forbidden for several years, a woman walking alone is still considered something improper. Since 2018, women in Saudi Arabia have been allowed to drive, and I personally saw women behind the wheel of a car. They were always driving with female friends. When it got dark, the streets became lively. The markets and shops all opened after a hot day. In some restaurants, there are no tables or chairs. Here, everyone sits and dines on the carpet. In many stores, you could see a prayer clock for sale. These clocks show the exact time for each prayer during the day. And this is a shop where they sell agar wood and incense. Saudis love these scents. They are burned in special incense burners. I wanted to buy some sweets for my relatives as a gift, and that's where the adventures began. Neither my German nor my Ukrainian card went through. I had to look for an ATM and withdraw cash. I was only able to withdraw money at the second ATM. I must note that Saudis are generally very friendly and helpful, and they are not pushy, which is often the case in the Middle East. I really liked that. And with this pleasant impression from communicating with the locals, I returned back to hotel. Since it was Ramadan, the hotel's restaurant was closed in the morning. I took this into account in advance and ordered breakfast in my room. That was allowed, but it turned out to be quite expensive. However, there was no other alternatives. A separate piece of advice for you is to be careful at pedestrian crossings and traffic lights. Saudis often ignore traffic lights.
Please wait. برجاء الانتظار. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Please start crossing. يمكنك
I plan to visit a local museum. I don't know what I was expecting during Ramadan, but the museum was closed. And while I was thinking about what to do next, dozens of military planes and fighters began to fly over the bay. It got a little scary, because only 200 kilometers across the Persian Gulf is Iran. So I was afraid it's somehow connected. On the streets of Dammam, they often sold t-shirts with Ronaldo's name. You have probably heard that Cristiano Ronaldo moved to live in Saudi Arabia. For this, he earned a lot of dislike in his native Portugal. But here the Saudis adore him. You are probably interested to know how much gasoline costs in Saudi Arabia. Here, in the oil-producing country, as of 2023, it cost about €0.5 per liter. This is 3 times cheaper than in Europe. My further journey was by bus. When I arrived at the Dammam bus station, it was difficult for me to understand what to do. Finally, I realized that I first need to check in, then get stickers for my luggage, and then wait. They only let people onto the bus platforms right before departure. And in the waiting room, I saw another scene that shattered my stereotypes about Saudi Arabia. A dark-skinned woman without an abaya, in a short-sleeved t-shirt that didn't cover her elbows, and you won't believe it, but in very tight leggings. Because of this, all her curves were visible. Even by European standards, it looked revealing. Imagine what it was like for the Saudis. But no one said anything to her. On the bus, there were again a separation of passengers. The front seats for women and families, the rest for men. Outside the bus window, the streets looked different, but they definitely weren't shiny as they were in my imagination. Everything was modest, even restrained. But the road was excellent. Even in the desert, the road was lit with street lights for hundreds of kilometers. The lights only disappeared near the Qatari border. On the way, the bus made a stop in the city of Al-Khufuf. The bus station here is quite decent and large. At the exit from the bus station, I see a symbolic inscription: "Peace be with you." And I want to wish you exactly that, my dear viewers. Wish you all peace. Please subscribe to my channel. Believe me, I have a few more interesting places for you. You won't regret it.